Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let me show you how you can share files and folders using iCloud Drive with anybody, even if they don't have an iCloud account. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There, you could read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to share a file or folder full of files over the internet using iCloud Drive. Now, this will work whether or not the other person has an Apple account and can access their own iCloud Drive. If they don't, things work a little differently, but they can still get access to the files. With folders, it's a little different, but you can still share an entire folder full of files with them if you do it right. So first, let's look at how to share a single file. Here I am in the Finder looking at some of my files. Now, it's important that these files already be in iCloud Drive. So in this case, if I look at the folder I'm in, it's Projects, and that's in my Documents folder, which is part of iCloud Drive in this case. If the file you want isn't in iCloud Drive, if it's in a local folder, then you need to move it into iCloud Drive. It doesn't matter where. It could be at the top level of iCloud Drive, or you can create a folder inside of iCloud Drive to hold files. Whatever you want to do, it's got to be in iCloud Drive for you to be able to share a file using iCloud Drive. So, seeing that all these files are, I can now share any one of them with iCloud Drive. To do this, I would first select the file, and then I need to bring up the sharing options. You can actually do this 3 different ways. One would be to go to File and then look for Share, and you can see it brings it up like that. You could also, with that file selected, click this Share button here at the top of the Finder window, and that brings up the same options. Or you can Control-click, right-click, or 2-finger click on a trackpad and then bring up the context menu, and there you've got Share as well, and it brings up, again, the same thing. So whichever way you choose, you end up here. Now you've got a choice at the top for Collaborate or Send a Copy. There are really more options in this, but they're hidden under these 2 major categories. Send a Copy will create a copy of that file and send it to that person. But Collaborate allows you to share it with them online, which is what you want. Collaborate also encompasses the idea of being able to collaborate using the same file, which isn't what we're doing here, but it does fall under the umbrella of collaboration. So we'll select Collaborate. Then right under it, it's important you choose options here. Now it's set to only invited people can edit. Well, we don't want it to be only invited people, and we certainly don't want them editing this file. So we're going to select it here and change both of these options. We're going to change it to anybody with a link. That way, the person doesn't have to have an iCloud account set up for them to be able to have access. They can just access it with the link that they're going to get. Then permissions, we're going to change it from can make changes to view only. In other words, all we're doing is giving them this file for them to copy. We don't want them to be able to change our file on our iCloud Drive. So we've got anyone with a link, view only. Now we need to send them this link that's mentioned here. There are many different ways to do it. We're going to go with the Invite with Link option. This one will just give us a link and we can do whatever we want with it afterwards. So I'll select that, and it's going to come up with this Invite with Link dialog here and say Preparing. And after a couple seconds, it'll be set, and you'll notice here that the file now says Shared by Me. So now it's shared. But where's the link? Well, if we use the Share menu again, either of those 3 options will work. I'll click here. Notice I've got Copy Link now. That wasn't there before. And if I copy link, I've got the link here that I could send to anybody. I could send it over messages. I could send it over email. I could write it down on a piece of paper and they could type it in. Any way would work for them to be able to get access to this file. And when you want to stop sharing a file, all you need to do is select the file and then Control-click it, right-click, or 2-finger click to bring up the context menu. Go to Manage Share File, which would appear underneath Share. And then you could see it there, who it's shared with. You could see its permissions, and you see a Stop Sharing button. Click that, and now you've stopped sharing that file. Now, what does the person on the other end see? Well, here's an email with one of these links, just like the one I created. And you can see what it looks like. It's got a lot of these random characters here to uniquely identify that file, and the name of the file there at the end. And if I click on it, and it takes me there. It says open the example shared file, which is the name of the file the other person shared with me. And if I say open, it will open it directly. And notice that this example shared file now is in my iCloud drive. So I've got it in my iCloud drive and they have it in their iCloud drive. You can see instead of saying shared by me, it now says shared by and the person sharing it. In this case, my main user account rather than this demo account. I can double click and open this file here, and here it is. And notice it says view only. So I can't really do anything with it. If I had changed the option instead of view only to I can edit, then I could actually edit the file and the changes would be seen by the owner of the file. We'd be collaborating on this document. But in this case, I just get it right here. I can't edit it. It's view only. If I actually try to edit it, it's not going to let me. So typing any keys is not going to actually allow me to use it here. But I can actually save a copy of it here. We'll go to the File menu, hold the Option key down, and choose Save As. And I'm going to save it as, my copy here of this file at the top level of my iCloud Drive folder. And I could make changes to this one just fine. If I've made a copy of this, I no longer want the shared copy here in my iCloud Drive. I can control click it, right click it, or two finger click on a trackpad, and I can see Manage Shared File. And under this, I can go and see there's the owner, there's me. I can click on the three dots to the right of me and say remove me. And now I no longer will have this file, but presumably I've made my copy. Now also I could have opened this link in Safari. I'm going to control click it here and do open with. Instead of iCloud, I'm going to select open with Safari. And when I do that, I get some options. So here I see the file and I can add to iCloud Drive, which is what we were doing before, but I could also just click download copy and it will download it. I could see it in my list of downloaded files. So it's like I downloaded it from a website. So this might be an easier way to do it when receiving a file. Instead of sharing it with somebody, having to save as and then remove the shared file, you can just open it in Safari here and use the download a copy link. Now, what were to happen if the person didn't have an iCloud account or they weren't even using a machine that had iCloud capability? Well, they would end up at this web page just like before. So you can see here they've got that download a copy link like before, but they also have add to iCloud Drive. So if they actually do have iCloud Drive available, they can click on this and it'll ask them to log into their iCloud Drive account. But the general idea is they would use the download a copy button here to get a copy of it, and they didn't have to have an Apple ID, an iCloud account, or anything in order to do this. Now sometimes you want to share more than one file, maybe an entire folder filled with files. So let's share this entire project folder. I'm going to go up one level here. There's the project folder. Let's share that entire thing. So to do that, you do exactly the same steps. You use one of the three methods to bring up the share controls. And you can see here I can select collaborate or send a copy as before. I use collaborate. I'm going to change to anybody with a link. I'm going to change to view only. And I'm going to select invite with link. And it says preparing. You may get this if you already have items shared in here. I'm going to say share anyway. It's going to say preparing and wait a little while. And when that's done, it will have a link ready to go. So now you can see the folder says shared by me. If I go back into the context menu, I can go to share and I could copy the link. And now I have a link that I could send that's for an entire folder. But what does the person on the other end get? Well, here is a link to a shared folder. If I click on this, you could see it does the same thing here. And if I'd say open, in this case, this folder is just called shared folder. And you can see it's got 3 files in it. If I go up a level, you can see shared folder has been added to iCloud Drive. But I only have permission to read these files. I can't change them. So the same thing happens here. It's view only. I have to save them out. If I want to, I could take this whole folder here. I could do Command D to duplicate, and I've got my copy of the files here. And now I can go in here. I can go to Manage Shared Folder and get rid of the shared copy, keeping my duplicate there. Or I could control click on the link. I could do Open With and go to Safari, and I get a similar page here. But notice there's no download link. There's only add to iCloud Drive. What if you're sharing this with somebody who doesn't have an iCloud account or an Apple ID? Well, of course, One option is for them to get one. It's completely free to get an Apple ID, and then they have an iCloud Drive account with a minimum amount of space, but certainly enough to share some files with. So yeah, if this is something that you want to do with somebody else and they're on Windows or something, they can just get a free Apple ID and then use iCloud.com or install iCloud Drive on their Windows machine and use it that way. But what if you don't want to ask the other person to do that? You want them to be able to download a folder full of files. How can you do that? Well, a simple way to do it is to convert a folder full of files to a single file. You can do it by control-clicking, right-clicking, or two-finger clicking to bring up that context menu, and one of the options there is compress. When you use that, it will zip up the files and create a copy right there. It doesn't get rid of the originals. It just creates this copy. So now I've got this new file here, projects.zip, that has all of the contents of the projects folder, but compressed into a single file. And a zip file is a cross-platform format, so anybody should be able to unzip the file and get to the files inside. Now that it's a single file, I can share it just like a regular single file. I'll do collaborate, anybody with a link, view only, I'll invite with a link, I'll wait for the link to be generated, and then I will go back in, share, and copy the link, and then send them that link. And then they would be able to download this file, and then probably just a double click will decompress it for them. Here's an example of that, a zip file from somebody. If I control click on it here and open with Safari, or if I just was on a machine that didn't have iCloud Drive, then you could see it brings up the same screen we saw before where there's a download a copy button. And I can use that, and now I've got that zip file there. As a matter of fact, Safari is going to automatically unzip all the contents of that. So for me at least, I actually get the shared folder there in my downloads folder with all the files. The other person may or may not have similar capability where it's unzipping it for them automatically, or they may need to double click it to unzip or open it in whatever compression utility they use. But the basic idea is you've got a way by compressing it first, just one step, and then sharing that compressed file that you can share a whole folder full of files with somebody easily, and they don't have to have an Apple ID or iCloud account. Now, there are other cloud services that make this a little easier. You can share with somebody else, and there's this public link that they could get and download a file or folder full of files, even if they don't have that same service. But of course, that's extra steps for you and perhaps extra cost to have that cloud service. So it's important to know how to do this using the iCloud service that you already have with your Mac. But what solution that you use to be able to share files between you and other people really depends on your specific situation, what you've got, what they've got, and how often you need to do it, how easy you need to make it for yourself and for them. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.